Dawn Canada is the oldest established organization for women with disabilities in the world, coming up on nearly 40 years next year. Coercive control is a hot topic in the media today because there's legislation coming forward finally to address gender-based violence and the crisis we have in our country with respect to gender-based violence. Coercive control. In 1985, Shirley Masuda, one of our early founders and publishers, wrote a book called Don't Tell Me to Take a Hot Bath. What was Shirley talking about? She was talking about women with disabilities being vulnerabilized, not vulnerable, vulnerabilized by the people around them. People who would not see her or other women with disabilities in the context of our rights and our dignity. When Tracy Latimer's father took her life and subsequently was treated by the public and media as a victim, and later in the context of the history of Dawn Canada, when our past president, Carmela Hutchison, was herself placed in an induced coma because of a health issue, the nurse who woke her or was beside her when she woke reassured her that her discomfort could be relieved and her suffering ended. Coercive control. According to Statistics Canada, 30% of women live with a disability. That's between 18 and 65. The rates for Black and Indigenous women are uncomfortably but predictably higher because of the intersecting discrimination and oppression they experience. Also, according to Health Canada, more women than men are accessing Track 2 MAID. Are we surprised? Is this surprising? No. We have the highest rates of violence, the highest rates of poverty, we have the lowest access to accessible housing and to health care. So why are we here today? Dawn Canada, along with others who are part of this coalition, have a long history of interventions to the courts, to this court, to the Supreme Court. Many of our decisions are used by Crown attorneys across this country in courts because some of those decisions address the egregious sexual assaults committed against women with disabilities. In 2006, in fact, along with the Council of Canadians with Disabilities and Independent Living Canada, we took Via Rail Canada to the Supreme Court of Canada because they wanted to cut some corners, save some money, and buy some nearly new rail cars to replace the old ones. The rail cars were not accessible and did not respect the human rights, obligations the state has to ensure that everyone should have equal access. We won that decision. In February 2023, I boarded one of those cars. 20 years. Nearly 20 years later, thousands of rides missed, thousands of rides never taken by people with disabilities because the government of the day made the wrong decision and did not choose the people. They chose a shortcut to save money. How many thousands of deaths must we see before it becomes clear to the courts, to the government, and to the people of this country that Track 2 MAID is depriving people of the most fundamental right we have, which is the right to live in dignity? We cannot afford to lose another Ruth or Susan. These are women I knew. Carmela's gone. They tried to take Heather from us. In too many, fearless women, fearless advocates and fighters to the end, and too many of them lost already. It's clear that our two incredibly resilient plaintiffs, in this case, were coerced. I'm coming back to coercion, and resisted the coercion and are here to bear witness with us to something that is going on in the healthcare spaces with the regularity that we just heard from Heather about that's deeply concerning. Governments sometimes make bad decisions and bad legislation. And the beauty of the system as it exists today is that we, civil society, and can call them on this and hold them to account, and that is why we're here today. Thank you. Un petit mot pour les journalistes francophones avant que je parle de la podium. C'est pour se rappeler d'une expression qu'on utilise au Québec qui est les femmes en situation de handicap. Pourquoi je trouve ça important? C'est pour comprendre que quand on dit une femme en situation de handicap, on nomme que c'est les choses autour d'elle qui la rendent handicapée. Alors, il faut se rappeler de ce concept et comprendre que la seule chose qu'on veut, c'est d'avoir toutes les mêmes choses que toutes les autres personnes au Canada ont accès et on veut vivre. Merci.
We are now moving to the Q&A portion of the press conference. I'm going to call up Krista and Bonnie to the stage. Heather will be taking questions as well, and she's going to turn around to face the cameras from there if she's addressed. I was going to pull this one over to her, and sorry, you want these ones as well to her?
Yeah, I would take all three. Sorry, it's awkward.
Yeah, we can bring her back. Heather, are you okay to come back to the podium? Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Maybe no more first. So you mentioned at the beginning, laying out the scope of the challenge, that this is specific to May Track 2, Bill C-7, not May Track 1. Bill C-7 also included the sunset clause that allows May for the sole purpose of mental illness. Would this charter challenge also touch on that?
So this charter challenge challenges MAID Track 2, which is for any person with a disability not at the end of life. So yes, it would in fact address that. Someone whose sole condition was a mental illness, not otherwise dying.
Timeline for the legal proceeding right now, what have you filed, what's next?
Notice of application was filed at the court right behind us yesterday. So the court process takes the time that it takes, so I don't exactly have a timeline, but the notice of application was filed yesterday.
You spoke also about, Heather spoke about the advice you might have gotten from, you can put like that over there, advice from doctors and stuff and how they too easily suggest MAID. Does the medical college or does something need to happen with regards to maybe training for doctors so they don't so easily jump on that?
The million-dollar question is that, is there more training available for people to look at what is possible for people with disabilities and not always go to Track 2 MAID? It's almost like people have been given a magic pill. What do you do with a person with disability? If you're not the person with the disability and they never ask you, they don't know. So the first thing that a lot of people do is make assumptions and have their biases. So yes, more understanding about disability and that it's not something we would choose right from the get, and that they've got to be more sensitive. All people do. I think all of us as Canadians need to, not just doctors, but I think everybody does. You try to get into a store, someone brings up MAID. Well, wouldn't MAID be better for them? They talk about me like I'm a them, not a to me. They always ask others about me. So yes, you're absolutely right. There needs to be a more understanding, and more Canadians need to understand what MAID Track 2 is. So that's key.
And just to follow up to that, all the training in the world for doctors doesn't change the fact that this law is discriminatory. It should not exist. It needs to be repealed. And training doctors how to better not ask people with disabilities who aren't dying if they want to be dying when it's the law in Canada is highly problematic. So at the end of the day, there's no training in any medical school in the world that's going to change the fact that this law should not be in existence. It violates the charter rights of people with disabilities, and it needs to be gone.
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry. Oh, there is a question.
As you all know, there is another another charter challenge before the courts about MAID regarding the exclusion for MAID for mental illness if that is unconstitutional. And the argument that is often presented is that MAID is a matter of personal autonomy and the rights of people to make decisions. All of you are here today because you believe that disabled people can make decisions, and people with disabilities can make decisions. So I just want to address the autonomy argument for people who may be hearing this saying, are you not taking away an autonomous choice?
Bonnie, did you want to address that?
Sure. I think if we focus on the word autonomy and what that represents, we understand why we aren't talking about real autonomy here. And again, in my comments, I focused on coercion, and it's well documented that the issue of coercion, especially in the context of women, is a massive issue that is resulting in a crisis in gender-based violence in this country. And women with disabilities, at above 30%, are among those victims, and they aren't getting the services and supports that they need. That's also been well documented. So I don't think we're talking about autonomy here. I think we're talking about a pretense of autonomy when we haven't addressed the core issues that the people that we stand for are dealing with on a daily basis. Thank you.
And I might add to that, Megan, we put limits on people's autonomous choices all the time. If I want to drive and I'm drinking, I'm under the influence of alcohol, it's against the law to do that because it can cause harm to others. So the state limits our autonomy in all kinds of ways under the law because it causes harm to others. This law causes serious harm to people with disabilities, and it's, as Bonnie mentioned, there's no choice. We have this special autonomous choice for only one group of people. Not everybody gets this autonomous choice, just people with disabilities who aren't dying. And what is the underlying factor of that? How does the harm that causes to the population of people with disabilities is absolutely irreparable. I just want to say thank you. I think we're done with questions. Thank you very much for attending today's press conference. Your thoughtful questions and participation are very greatly appreciated. And we trust that the information we've shared with you today will provide valuable insights into why we are challenging this discriminatory law. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have further inquiries, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much for being here. Merci beaucoup.